To Lewiston. My name is Simonson, and I'm a proud volunteer for the Historical Association. Ladies and gentlemen, we stand here tonight on very historic ground. This was the birthplace of Niagara Falls 12,000 years ago. This was the place where Europeans first came to settle Western New York. It's where commerce on the Great Lakes began. This is where the first battle of the War of 1812 was fought. But interestingly enough, and more historically significant, this place is known for something else that many people may not realize. Why? Because there were no records. There was not publicly discussed. And yet what happened right here at Freedom Crossing was part of a cultural shift that changed the world forever. Volunteers in this community were on a secret mission 160 years ago, a mission that actually broke the law and was so important that it was a matter of life and death. We're talking about the Underground Railroad. Tonight, we are here to honor the courage of those escaping the oppression of slavery and also those who helped them on their journey to freedom across the Niagara River. We have remarks from several honored guests this evening, but first let me introduce you to the President of the Historical Association of Lewiston, Diane Finkbeiner, with some welcoming remarks. Diane?
Good evening. It is my great pleasure to welcome everyone here, guests and members, on behalf of the Historical Association of Lewiston. This evening we will describe with eloquence and passion that extraordinary moment in human history that has become known as the Underground Railroad. It has been my lifelong hope to be part of an organization that could bring history to life in a meaningful way and make it a part of our daily lives. Tonight exceeds every hope. Freedom's Crossing is a monument that is conceived, developed, and achieved entirely through the efforts of a volunteer organization. Volunteers honoring the volunteers that were members of the Underground Railroad organization. That organization's only membership requirement was courage and compassion, and its bylaws the simple truth that no human being has the right to enslave another. The architect of our efforts has been Mr. Lee Simonson. He has been tireless in his endeavor to see this human experience brought to us in cast and bronze. And I ask you all to join with me to thank the volunteers of this organization, and most especially Mr. Lee Simonson and all of his. I would also like to invite you all, when our festivities and our memorial is done here this evening, to join us at the Barton Hill Hotel for coffee and hot cider, take the edge off the cold. And if I may now introduce briefly Pam Hoff. She is our Executive Director of the Historical Association of Lewiston.
Good evening and welcome. We're pleased to have so many of you here. Each year, the Western New York Association of Historical Agencies, which serves the 12 counties in the Western New York area, presents an Individual Achievement Award to recognize outstanding accomplishment in state and local history. It's given to an individual in the 12-county New York, Western New York area whose participation and leadership has contributed significantly to the preservation and documentation of local history. This year, the Individual Achievement Award is being presented to a man who 3 years ago had an idea. He took his idea to an artist, and together they designed a sculpture that would depict a scene from a novel, one which tells the story of an all too true part of our history. Then he wrote all of the grant proposals. he made all of the presentations to all of the commissions and the committees and the boards that would secure the funding required for a project of this magnitude. It was his commitment and his conviction and perseverance and stroke of genius in engaging Susan Geisler that made this magnificent work of art a reality. He is extremely deserving of this recognition, and I am proud to call him a friend. Lee Simonson.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, when Diane was done with her remarks, she came up to me and said, "We're sorry for hijacking the presentation this evening. That was a surprise." Thank you very much. You know, without the support and cooperation from both the village and the town of Lewiston, none of this would have been possible. Let me recognize and thank the trustees of the village of Lewiston. Trustee Mike Morrow, who chaired our planning committee, and trustees Bill Guyman, Terry Calisano, and Ron Winkley. Are you here? Please stand. Representing the village this evening is the first public official to endorse this project and offers unconditional support. He will be retiring in 2 weeks from public service, and he will be leaving behind a legacy that has taken us to the next level and established this village as the cultural centerpiece of Western New York. Mr. Mayor, we hope you look at this project as the final and most precious jewel that will be placed in your treasury of achievements. On behalf of the Historical Association and the citizens of Lewiston, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome for the last time the mayor of the village of Lewiston, Richard Solari.
Not the last time. My wife said, make sure everybody knows you're healthy. And I am. And this is such a great endeavor. You know, walking down, as you know, I walk everywhere. I thought, what a great project for such a great community. What a proud night for such a proud community. And believe me, I am very proud, and particularly for Lee and the Historical Society. Diane Finkbeiner, fairly new resident. She came into town, joined the Historical Society, became the president, brought it alive, brought people on like Lee and Pam and all the other volunteers of the Historical Society. And this is one great project. You probably all have had a peek at it, I'm sure, and we're going to get a large peek. But I wanted to thank our village board for their unequivocal immediate support of this project. And in particular, tonight, I really want to honor the Village of Lewiston Department of Public Works. And Terry Berlinski, our deputy superintendent, is here. And Terry, you stand and represent
Right here,
all the
right
boys.
back there. Thank you,
Terry
Terry.
Berlinski, Brian Mills, Dave Waver, Larry Mills, Bob Lukas, Tom Krell, Fran Flanagan, James Quarantillo, and Billy Justic. They all worked, put this together. Now, of course, they didn't build the monument. And we can't take that away from Susan. So I'm here to congratulate everybody and tell you how proud I am to be mayor, if you have been mayor, and, you know, I'll probably always feel like I'm a mayor. So I love Lewiston. Welcome, everybody.
Ladies and gentlemen, the town of Lewiston played a vital role in moving this project to completion by securing funds from the recent relicensing agreement with the Power Authority. No tax dollars were used, and we are very thankful and appreciative of the support the town has given us. Let me recognize and thank the councilman from the town of Lewiston. Councilman Ed Palmer, who first introduced the resolution in support of Freedom Crossing, Councilman Mike Johnson, Al Bax, and Councilman Sean Edwards. Are you here? Please raise your hand. Representing the town this evening, and the person who successfully presented the Freedom Crossing project to the host Communities Committee, which gave the ultimate approval to make this a reality. Please welcome the supervisor of the town of Lewiston, Fred Newland. Fred?
Thank you, everybody. It's nice to see so many fellow history lovers present, although I bet we can all agree we're glad we're not getting on a rowboat tonight trying to get over to the other side. But it gives you an appreciation of what was driving people to such death-defying feats to seek freedom. I thought I'd open up with a small quote from Abraham Lincoln, who on January 1st, 1863, included this in his Emancipation Proclamation. "I do order and declare that all persons held as slaves within said designated states and parts of states are and henceforward shall be free, and that the executive government of the United States, including the military and naval authorities thereof, will recognize and maintain the freedom of said persons." Those words, as distant as they may seem to us here tonight, seemed even more distant, perhaps impossibly distant, to the slaves who came to Lewiston and this crossing in those decades before the Civil War. Many wondered at that time, including Lincoln himself before he was president, as to whether or not slavery was going to be a permanent institution in the United States. The very thought in those years, the antebellum years, of an American president ever freeing the slaves seemed like something that might never come to pass. As we sit here this evening, chasing the last rays of the setting sun, we remember those who came to this very place more than 150 years ago to chase their very last hopes for freedom. We can only imagine what those people felt when they came to Lewiston and stood on this very ground. We can, however, catch a glimpse of that time when we look at this amazing memorial. This beautiful sculpture puts us right there on those same shores from long ago. We can see the intensity of the moment, the expressions on their faces which speak to us down through the centuries, the expressions of hope, of fear, of expectation and joy. If one of the goals of sculpture is to bring to us a third dimension and realism of a distant past, this monument is a resounding success. This is the first Greenway project the town has funded. Thanks to the agreement I signed with the Power Authority a few years ago, Lewiston will now receive more than $500,000 each and every year for the next 50 years for projects like Freedom Crossing. That's an unprecedented opportunity to invest in our history, our parks, and recreation. And it's projects like Freedom Crossing, I think, that make the best use of these monies. This area was called the Western Door by the Senecas. To those who were escaping the tyranny of slavery, it was a door to freedom. And now, as we dedicate this marvelous new addition to our community, let it serve as the opening of a new door, a door to the future where we invest in our unique history and lay the groundwork for an even brighter tomorrow. I'd like to offer my sincere gratitude on behalf of the people of Lewiston to the artist Susan Geisler for her talent and this amazing work of art. I'd also like to thank the Historical Association, especially my friends Diane Finkbinder and Lee Simonson. Lee and I were the ones fighting for this money 5-6 years ago, and it's nice to see something concrete come from all that time, Lee. I'd also like to thank our fellow sponsors. I look forward to working with all of you on making some more history in the years ahead. Thank you, and if I could call Susan Geisler to the stage just for a moment, please. It's my great pleasure to present to you on behalf of the people of Lewiston the key to the town of Lewiston, as a small token of our esteem and respect for your artistry and the wonderful project you've given us here today. Congratulations.
I apologize to the elected officials I did not see this evening, but I do want to recognize a couple of individuals that did join us that I did see. First, State Senator George Maziarz. George, are you still here? Right here, thank you. Niagara County Legislator John Soretto. John, thank you for joining us. I apologize if I missed you. When Key Bank first saw the conceptual model of Freedom Crossing 2.5 years ago, that's 2.5 years ago, it didn't take long for them to sign on to the project. This evening, we extend our sincere gratitude to Key Bank and specifically to the person who believed in this project from the very beginning and gave us her support and unwavering confidence that we could actually pull this off. We thank her for her sponsorship and especially for her patience. Please welcome the first private sponsor for the Freedom Crossing Monument, the Vice President of Philanthropy and Civic Affairs for the Key Bank Foundation, Marie Hare. Marie.
Good evening. Thank you. Nelson Mandela said, "There is no passion to be found playing small." The Freedom Crossing Monument is no small endeavor, and it represents great passion. Henry David Thoreau said, "If you live your beliefs, you can turn the world around." The Freedom Crossing Monument represents a belief that did indeed turn the world around. The individuals depicted in the Freedom Crossing Monument suggest a unique kind of passion and belief, but also courage and a willingness to collaborate towards a common good. These components of humankind were desperately needed then, and there is a similar desperate need today. Thus, tonight's historic celebration will long remain in our minds as a strong testament to the good things that can happen when passion and beliefs meld with courage and collaboration. Key Bank is honored to support the Freedom Crossing Monument and share in this momentous occasion with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Marie. A little birdie told me that Niagara Falls Councilman Charles Walker is here. Councilman Walker? There you are in the back. Thank you very much for joining us. When it comes to funding cultural projects involving education, the arts, social services, youth agencies, there is no argument that the organization in Western New York that leads the pack is the Margaret L. Wendt Foundation. In the last 50 years, it has become the major force in creating a higher quality of life for all of us. This evening, we want to recognize and show our gratitude to Margaret L. Wendt's major role in underwriting the Freedom Crossing Monument. We are forever grateful. Please welcome Margaret L. Wendt Foundation trustee, Janet Lowe Day. Janet?
Thank you, Lee. We were really excited when this project first got presented to us, seeing the drawings and that it was just, it caught our imagination immediately. So I'm very pleased to be here tonight representing the Margaret L. Wendt Foundation and my fellow trustees, Robert Cressy and Mr. Thomas Lund, who could not be here, unfortunately, tonight. Our foundation was founded by a very unique woman, Margaret L. Wendt, who was an individual and who strove to reach her highest potential, even though at the time education wasn't high on the priorities for women, and she never went beyond the Buffalo Seminary. But she always strove to reach the highest power she could. And I think this sculpture represents the same theme, where people are striving to reach freedom and to reach their most potential in their life. So it's exciting to be part of it. I think Margaret would be excited to know about it if she could. And we're just really happy that the Village of Lewiston has proceeded and done such a great job with this. History comes alive, and that's important. On a little side note, I was an elementary teacher before I was a trustee, and I knew the book Freedom Crossing and enjoyed how it made history come alive for children, and it's great to see it coming alive in this sculpture now. Thank you.
The Niagara River Greenway Commission is responsible for overseeing the planning and development of projects that enhance the access and appreciation of the Niagara River from Buffalo to Youngstown. Over the next 50 years, the Commission will review hundreds of applications. You should know that history was made when the Commission released its first set of project approvals on January 15, 2008. The very first endorsement the Commission made was for the Freedom Crossing Monument. This evening, please welcome the Executive Director of the Niagara River Greenway Commission, Rob Ballou. Rob?
Let me just take a moment and say thank you, Lee. You've done a fantastic job. I've known you for a number of years that have been up here. And also let me say congratulations to the Lewiston Historical Society, Association. I've seen drawings and such of the monument. It looks fabulous, and I know it is once we get the unveiling. But let me take you back a little bit time in history, not quite back 160 years, but back to September of 2004. That's when then Governor Pataki signed into law that established the Niagara River Greenways Commission. And the charge was to develop a linear system of trails and parks along the Niagara River from Buffalo to Youngstown, providing access to everyone who needed and wants that access. Some of the other things that we were charged to do was to look at other things within the Niagara River Greenways boundaries and celebrate things like the historical, cultural, recreational things that have gone on here within the Western New York area over the last number of years, quite a few hundred years actually. We want to say thank you for this opportunity, and actually Lee talks about that first project. It was one of the first projects, if not the first project, that the Commission deemed consistent to the plan. And in May of 2007, a current Commissioner of New York State Parks, who had to sign off on the plan after numerous of meetings, hundreds of people came out and worked and participated in this plan, to develop the plan, and then there was an open public comment period, both here locally and throughout the entire state, talking to them and trying to get input on the plan. Commissioner Ash came to town, and we gave her a mini tour of some of the potential projects that through the development of the plan might come to fruition if the plan is approved. This was the first stop that day. Do you remember, Mayor? Do you remember? You were along with the Supervisor. This was the first stop. We left our offices on Grand Island, motor coached up here, came out. Lee gave a great presentation about what the vision was, what the dream was, and the Commissioner left here very pleased and happy. As a matter of fact, not less than 4 hours later, she signed off on the plan. And I know that the presentation that was made up here by Lee and the Historical Society of the Town of Lewiston and Village of Lewiston made a great impact on her. Congratulations once again. Look forward to many more projects coming from up in this area, and I want to wish you great success as the Freedom Crossing Monument brings more visitors and tourists to Western New York. Thank you.
Thank you. The Freedom Crossing book put Lewiston on the map. Thousands of school children across the United States read the book each year. We were proud to name our monument after the book. Tonight, we have a special guest who is a native of this area but now lives in California. She is the daughter of Margaret Goff Clark, the author of the Freedom Crossing book that started the ball rolling 40 years ago. Please welcome Marcia Clark Noel. Marcia?
Good evening. I'm surprised to see so many people here. From California, it's a little cold for us. I'm honored to be here this evening for the celebration and to represent my mother, my best friend. And congratulations to all of you who shared the vision for Freedom Crossing Monument. My mother would have been proud and thrilled to be part of this project and to have her book, Freedom Crossing, represented in this magnificent work of art. Thank you, Lee, and thank you, Susan. As many of you know, my mother was an author for young people with 27 published books, many of them based on the historical background of the Niagara frontier. She graduated from Buffalo State Teachers College and taught for 6 years in the Buffalo, Niagara area. This is where she began her writing career. Her husband, Charles R. Clark, was first superintendent of Niagara-Wheatfield Central School District. For 30 years, my parents lived in a century-old house on Lockport Road in the town of Niagara. It was here my mother, Margaret, set up her office space in a front upstairs bedroom. Her body of work included poetry, short stories, plays, and in 1960, she began writing books that were historically accurate mystery novels for children. Freedom Crossing was her 5th book. It was published in 1969. Initially, she had thought she would be writing a book about astronomy, with the lead character following the North Star. This idea came to her as she and my father had a cottage in Canada, where the night skies are clear with thousands of bright, shiny stars. The heavens had always interested her since she was a child. At this time, she did not have a specific plot in mind, but when she returned to the falls, she continued to research ideas and discuss this with librarians and teachers, and found that there had been very little written for children on the topic of the abolitionist movement and the Underground Railroad. She now had the necessary ingredients for a book. She could use astronomy, as she knew the slaves followed the star for guidance, and through friendships with Dr. Owen and the Harpers, Tryon's Folly was available for research, and this was the house on the river that she referred to as the House of Four Cellars. She believed young people should be educated on the history of slavery and the Underground Railroad, and this could be told through a fictional story based on fact. The plot came together, and Freedom Crossing was born. In her note, she said, quote, "I feel I can light one small candle by writing this book." Freedom Crossing is set in the mid-1800s, and the story takes place here in Lewiston, as seen through the eyes through a young girl, Laura, with Southern sympathies, who comes to question the idea of government and its authority on slavery. After living with relatives in Virginia on a plantation for 4 years, Laura returns to Lewiston to live with her father and her brother, only to find out that her home is now a station on the Underground Railroad. Laura must develop a change of heart, courage, and the conviction to do the right thing in order to help Martin, a young slave, escape to freedom. One child reader wrote, "I like Laura because she's out there, she's cool, and she sticks up for herself." Freedom Crossing is still in print after 40 years and is used in the schools across the country. This book was written during the turbulent 1960s, where once again we were questioning our government. Margaret was forward-thinking for a conservative educator of her generation. She had a strong belief in equality and freedom. Her attention to detailed research gave her books authenticity. She believed her books should be not only entertaining but educational, and should leave the reader feeling safe and encouraged. She said, quote, "If the characters are winning, I think it helps to convince the readers that they too can win. That's one reason I like happy endings." End of quote. Her books always did end with happy endings. Margaret Goff Clark died October 6, 2003, at age 90. At her memorial, her family, her friends, and her fellow writers described her as a possibility thinker with a wonderful sense of humor. She was non-judgmental, empathetic, compassionate, exceedingly generous, with elegance and grace. She chose her path carefully and was always true to her family, her talent, her readership, and herself. As author, educator, and friend, she has enriched us all. Her book, Freedom Crossing, and her vision for freedom continue to inspire. The glow from the one small candle she lit 40 years ago shines on all of us tonight. I'm very proud to be her daughter. Thank you.
We have a number of school students here in the back. Have you read the book so far, or are you in the process of reading it? Oh, you already read it. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Where are you from? Okay, homeschoolers. Are you from Erie County? Okay, great. Thank you for joining us. Have you enjoyed the book? Good. My friends, can any of us actually put ourselves in the shoes of the freedom seekers? Can we even imagine what it was like to travel hundreds of miles under the worst conditions to escape bondage? The answer is no, we can't. The perseverance and courage shown by the fugitives is almost unparalleled in human history. We are very honored this evening to welcome a descendant of fugitive slaves who escaped from Kentucky and who crossed the Niagara River to freedom. She is recognized as one of the foremost authorities on the Underground Railroad as it relates to our region in Western New York and Southern Ontario. Please welcome Leslie Harper Wells. Leslie?
Hi. I guess I am putting myself in the shoes of the freedom seekers who crossed the Niagara River this evening. I have to tell you, to be asked to represent those that have crossed this mighty Niagara River is quite a humbling experience for me and a bit overwhelming as well. My family crossed the Niagara River at Fort Erie in 1850 from Kentucky. 2 young boys and their 9-year-old sister came across that mighty Niagara River, this one, and settled in Fort Erie where they lived their lives. Tonight we remember them on this cold evening, and really, when you think about it, it could be much, much colder. Many of these freedom seekers left their plantations and the warmth of the South to travel between U.S. Thanksgiving and Christmas time, because that's when the enslaver would be occupied with holidays, with family and friends. So it was an opportunity for those who could not stand the injustice and the inhumane life that they had been given to stay any longer. I want to congratulate all those involved on this wonderful sculpture that we're going to be unveiling in the remembrance to the people that I am proudly a descendant of. I'm going to talk a little bit about the company that I have. It's called Niagara Bound Tours. And it started 6 years ago, in the 1970s in Canada, when they started to really pay attention to things that might have happened along the Niagara River in conjunction with the Underground Railroad. I approached some of our powers to be and asked them if they would like some of my family information, to which they responded, unless it's written down, we don't want to know it. So I went, okay. If they asked me now, that wouldn't happen, but at that time I was still a little bit shy and a little bit timid. People that know me would find that hard to believe, but at that time I was, and I just said, well, one of these days I'm going to write a book and then it will be written down. And I don't know how it happened, but somehow, instead of writing it down, it turned into a tour company. And for me, it's become more than a business. It's become a calling. And for so many of us that are involved in telling these stories, it has become a calling. We're speaking not as ourselves. It doesn't matter who we are as individuals. We are the vessels that are used to tell the stories of those that came before to those that will come after. And there are so many stories, and we also try to stay as historically correct as possible, because when we're no longer here anymore, for children like that growing up, we want to make sure that as they pass along the story, that they're also able to tell the true and factual story. I am not just speaking of the freedom speakers when I talk about these stories, but I'm talking about the abolitionists, the members of the anti-slavery societies, the conductors, the station masters who saw the serious and cruel injustice of enslaving human beings, that they felt moved by their Christian convictions and faith to do what they could do to help, even if the penalties of that for them might mean death. I thank God for people like Josiah Tyrone, although not always viewed in the best light by some in the community, I'm sure, as were many. He continued to do what in his heart he felt was right and just. Those of us who are descendants have not always been proud of where we came from. I am praying that this site, going forward, is that those that come to see this magnificent sculpture will understand that who those people were that crossed that mighty Niagara River on many a night that may have been colder than this so long ago, with fear, trepidation, hope, and faith, that as they journeyed on, even before they arrived in Lewiston, and understand that journey that they took from the South and from plantations and cruelty and sadness. That they understand the struggles and understand that they were going on not just to Great Canaan land as they had been promised, there were going to be struggles in Canada as well. But in spite of all this, these people survived and they thrived by the grace of God and the assistance of some wonderful people. I want to conclude with a short story. There's been some wonderful quotes, and my quote will be from my great uncle Kip. He's the one who told me the stories that I share on my tours and took me to places that the town of Fort Erie didn't even know existed way back when. He was about 100 years old when he died in 1986, and he was one of 13 children. And in 1986, there was himself and his sister Margaret, my great Aunt Marg. My Aunt Marg would have been around 96, and the reason we only can estimate is that their birth certificate records were burned in the Parliament building fires. And it said, both certificates said 1892, and as much as we try and explain, well, that can't be right. One of you was born in July, and the other one was born in November. But if you'll remember, and I'm sure you have relatives said, well, that's what the government said. So we just sort of went, okay, whatever. And anyway, they were the last two of 13, my grandmother's brother and sister. And Aunt Marg passed away one night. And I went to tell Uncle Kit the next morning what had happened. And I have to do it in his voice because I can't say it any other way. But I went into his room and I said, Uncle Kit, I have some bad news for you. He said, what is it? I said, well, Aunt Marg passed last night. And he said, she did? Poor thing, what happened to her? And I'm thinking, she was 96 years old? But I didn't, I was trying to be sensitive. So I said, Uncle Kit, I guess she just gave up. And he became very angry and irate with me, and he said, what do you mean she gave up? You don't give up, you keep going till you can't go no more. Well, I've taken that from my uncle, and I apply it to the people that I talk about on my tour. They had some incredibly difficult days, and when you really think and you start to read about this history, you'll hear and understand their stories even more. And as I've learned, and it really is, you can talk about various aspects of this, but once you start reading it and truly understanding what these people went through, and then understanding the abolitionists, for those of you, because you have Josiah Tyron, I'm going to suggest to the people of Lewiston that you nominate him for the Abolitionist Hall of Fame Museum in Peterborough, New York. I'm sure they have open nominations right now, and if you don't, I will. I want to thank Lewiston for such a lovely remembrance and for honoring the people that I am so proud to say that I am a descendant of, and God bless you all.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Historical Association makes it a point to support our local businesses. So when it came time to commission the creation of the Freedom Crossing Monument, we considered ourselves very fortunate to have one of the foremost sculptors in the nation with a studio right down the street. A woman who grew up in Lewiston and still lives and works here. Today, her talents are recognized internationally as one of the premier sculptors of the animal and human form. But after tonight, we think her life is going to change just a little bit. Why? Because there are many great sculptors out there who do an excellent job of expressing themselves three-dimensionally, and what you see is a representation of the exterior of their subjects. But what you're about to see in a few minutes is much more. This new masterpiece will redefine her as the quintessential American artist who has that rare talent that exposes the interior of her subjects, an artist who can capture the spirit of both the heart and soul. Now, some of you may think that's an overstatement, but don't take my word for it. You will experience this for yourself tonight when this monument touches you emotionally. It will have such an effect on those who see it that its impact will echo throughout future generations. Please welcome and congratulate our Freedom Crossing artist, Susan Geisler. Susan? Thank you all. Isn't it ironic to think that the man we honor here this evening, Josiah Tryon from Lewiston, died the same year the Statue of Liberty was dedicated, 1886 to be exact. And yet, decades earlier, he helped create another gateway to freedom right here on the opposite side of the state. A secret gateway that ushered people out of the United States rather than into it. Tonight, we celebrate the unveiling of New York State's second Statue of Liberty, and the similarities are striking. It's not as tall, it's not as massive, but watch what happens as its image and its message takes hold. You are part of history tonight because you are part of dedicating a new international emblem, a new icon that will stand for 1,000 years, a landmark that will become recognized throughout the world as a symbol of freedom's victory over oppression. What we celebrate tonight is Lewiston's shining moment, a time when ordinary citizens took matters into their own hands and just did the right thing. Now, we're no match to the bravery and determination of our Lewiston forefathers, but we can immortalize their courage and the courage of those they protected. This is our generation's gift to the future. We dedicate this monument with the words used by Joshua Cook, a descendant of one of Lewiston's original settlers. Mr. Cook wrote a history of Lewiston in 1902, over 100 years ago, and he concluded that by stating, "For those of you in the future who read these words, there is another record book to be opened when this and all other earthly volumes have passed away. When that judgment day comes and the page of Lewiston is turned, it will not be the names of the men who led us in politics or material enterprise who will stand the highest. At the head of all will be the name of one of the lowliest as to place, one of the poorest as to possessions. While others lived for this world, he made this world a stepping stone to a higher world for himself and others. Whole generations of young call him blessed in their age, for he led them in and he shielded them with counsel and with prayer. In the heavenly memories of Lewiston, when the book of life is read, the name that will stand above all others will be Josiah Tryon. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Thank you for your support. Thank you for making Western New York and Lewiston's dreams come true. Thank you.
The year 1850. Fugitive slaves from the South have spent months finding their way to Lewiston, the last step on a long and dangerous journey to freedom in the promised land of Canada. With the help of his neighbors and friends from the Presbyterian Church, Josiah Tryon organizes the escape for the freedom seekers. Young Laura Eastman will join him tonight as Josiah reunites a lost father with his family. But, as always, Josiah has to be on the lookout for slave catchers who are determined to earn their bounty. He misdirects them in order for his secret mission to succeed. This is not the time for any mistakes. When the coast is clear, Josiah quickly guides the runaways to his waiting rowboat on the river's edge. Tonight, as he has on so many nights before, Josiah Triumph will open his rainbow heart. Despite breaking the law, he will allow himself to be used as God's instrument in answering desperate prayer. This is the place. This is the time. And this is Freedom Crossing.